Today I'm joined by Nick Pester. I know Nick for over 4 years. I met Nick when we were both in the world of InsurTech. Nick actually was working for a leading legal firm and was interested in mentoring startup at the time and was willing to mentor the startup which went through my accelerator. Then Nick moved from legal advice within a legal firm to becoming the group legal counsel in the leading InsurTech growth venture in the UK. But also Nick was involved with actually as an advisor for the Chartered Insurance Institute, where he worked on data ethics, innovation, and digitization of artificial intelligence in insurance. So I'm so thrilled to have Nick with us today. We know each other.
Thank you for having me. I can't believe it's actually 4 years. It's been nearly 5 years, in fact. It's been a while. Yeah.
It's been a while. And I remember when you used to take me out for lunch on St. Catherine's Docks, remember?
That was nice. That was one of the perks of working for a law firm, right? You could take people out for lunch. I miss that. I do.
I used to have those great lunch and enjoy the waterfront at St. Catherine's Docks and great memories.
Very nice. Yeah.
So Nick, tell us, how are you to start with?
I'm good, thank you, Sabine. It's been a funny 18 months or so. I think it's actually, there have been some benefits, some silver linings to the cloud, if you like. I think it's led to people reassessing priorities. I think it's led to better work-life balance. I think obviously flexible working, which was already, well underway in terms of direction of travel, has picked up, much more acceptability around people working from home and working where they need to work and working the hours they need to work to fit in with their lifestyle. So it feels like a very, very different world in some respects to 18 months ago, but still, very similar in other respects, like, for example, how the insurance market works and the things that still need to improve within the insurance market.
So tell us a little bit more. I mean, I've done a little bit of an introduction about you, but tell us about you. What makes you tick every day? What got you into that legal career?
To be honest, I kind of fell into insurance to start with. The firm that I applied to for a training contract was actually a media and entertainment specialist, which was one of my kind of things that I was really interested in at the time. I think I had like these kind of visions of me advising big bands, around the world and that type of thing. And then actually they happened to have a really strong insurance practice. And so I just started working with the insurance teams there. And I just really enjoyed the fact that there was a dual layer to all of the legal aspects that you dealt with. You had the insurance layer, the actual policy wordings and how that was interpreted. And then you had obviously the underlying subject matter as well, whatever it was that was being insured, whether it was cars or property or whatever. So I really enjoyed that kind of, layered approach to lawyering. And then in terms of what makes me tick is probably why I ended up moving in-house to a tech business. I like flying by the seat of my pants a little bit, I guess. I like challenge. I like excitement. I like disruption. I'm very passionate about trying to improve things within the kind of sphere of influence that I have, whether that be within the legal area or whether that be within the tech area. So I just like not knowing necessarily what a day will bring, and just whatever challenges might be thrown up during that day. That's what I find most enjoyable about my job.
So tell us, what is the day in a life of Nick?
Well, so now in COVID kind of times, a very early start so that I can get some work done before the children are up and before we have all of the other people coming onto Slack and email and, all of the questions start coming through. I always get out for a run religiously every day for half an hour. I think it's really important to have that kind of headspace and just to kind of think and, and just to kind of get out some of the stresses of the day. Generally now we'll always have dinner with the family and my children, which is lovely, like a really nice kind of aspect of kind of being home working. Otherwise, it could be anything. I suppose where I am currently, it's It tends to be partnership focused. So a lot of work around our insurance partners, our reinsurance partners, our technology partners. There's always something going on the partnership front. There's usually claims questions to deal with as well. Otherwise, it's kind of running around and responding to fires as and when they arise, dealing with them as quickly as you can, and then trying to find some headspace to actually look more than a week or 2 weeks or a month ahead, and actually think properly about the strategy of the legal function and the wider business. So it could be anything, but that's a general flavour of what it is.
What has been the shift when you look at your work within a legal firm and then moving into an InsurTech or tech firm? Have you seen a difference between the demand between the two different roles? And you also mentioned partnership, and would love to hear a little bit more about the demands of building, I guess, digital ecosystem of partnership-based environments, actually, legally.
Yeah. It's a really good question. So I think in terms of the difference in environments, I mean, they're chalk and cheese. They really are. I was lucky in that the firm that my last firm that I was within private practice in was, I would regard it as kind of a midway point between a traditional law firm and actually more of a startup type business, because it was quite a young firm, worked with a lot of early stage businesses, had that entrepreneurial mindset. But I think you compare it to the very traditional kind of city practices, it tends to be, I mean, obviously you get the odd surprise here and there, but it tends to be a little bit more predictable, a little bit more kind of, 9 to 6, 9 to 7 type hours. You know what you're going to be working on 1, 2, 3 weeks in advance. I think with a in-house and tech environment, obviously, you literally do not know what is coming around the corner. I mean, I'm in the process of changing roles, and even trying to transition from one to the other, you can't really plan more than a day ahead, because you think that you've got to the end of your list, and then suddenly, day before you go, something else pops up that you have to deal with. So it's a really different aspect. I think also just the commercial side of it. So just being much more integrated into the commercial side of the business, not just sort of fixated on the pure legal issues. And to your second question, which I think dovetails quite nicely, I think bringing that commercial eye to partnerships is incredibly important as a lawyer in-house. The lawyers that I feel will do well in-house are ones that can cast that commercial eye, can build relationships as well outside of the technical kind of text of what the partnership agreements may say. The best partnerships that we have, that I built, that I've been part of, have been the ones where there's regular conversation all the time, regular communications, regular touch points, regular reviews. You can't just put an agreement in place and say, there we go, off you go. That partnership is up and running. It doesn't work like that. They require a lot of nurturing and a lot of care. And that's what we've done, I think.
Yeah, no, interesting, because remember I had a legal counsel with the accelerators, partly when you deliver so many contracts with the startups here, you need somebody all the time. But I think that is one thing we used to talk about all the time, is not just the legal side of the equation. You need to have a commercial mind to actually or to understand the nuances required from contract to contract, which are often very different from one to the other within the startup, the tech environment.
You had an excellent legal counsel, as I recall, because I used to deal with her now and again. Yeah,
I know. I miss her very much, and she knows it. And she knows it. So, when you look at your team in the tech environment, have you had to recruit a different profile of legal counsel? What would be, the things one need to pay attention to when you look at tech startups trying to build their own legal counsel?
Character, in a word, character. I was actually talking about this the other day. I think law firms and some businesses tend to be far too fixated on the granularity of academics and qualifications. Of course, you need to be qualified. Of course, you need to have, a degree, etc. But actually, what turns a good lawyer into a really great lawyer is personality and character. People who can roll with the punches, people who can, take something on the chin and move on. Most importantly for lawyers, people who can accept being wrong. I don't think lawyers as a profession are very good at admitting when they're wrong, I would say. I think in a startup environment, as you well know, you need to be prepared to make mistakes. That's part and parcel of learning, right? It's not, in fact, I would actually regard it as being strange not to make a mistake. So I think having that strength of character to make decisions quickly, to recognize and accept that they won't always be right, but you have a chance to put them right and you have a chance to learn from the experience. So I think depth of character for me, 100%.
Interesting. So I want to go into your knowledge around building sustainable growth ventures, because as a legal counsel, as a lawyer, you have seen for many years what makes a great companies from a good company and from maybe a less good company. So what are, you think, the criteria which are so important to build sustainable growth ventures?
I think first two main points, I would say. Firstly, a very, very clear mission in terms of what it is that you're trying to solve, what it is you're trying to address. Things like the strategy and the day-to-day kind of, how you achieve that, they can fall in after, right? You need to have a very, very clear vision of what it is that you want to, what it is, why you're doing it, why, the why of what it is that you're doing. That's the most important thing. Secondly, the people. I think a lot of startups and fairness, businesses generally, some businesses I've been in, people have underestimated the importance of people. It sounds like such an obvious statement, but genuinely, it's surprising how often that's not recognized within a business. Get in really good people. You're going to spend money on something, spend it on the best people, because you get the best people in place. They know what the mission is. You're 50% of the way there. And I think finally, focus. This is one of the things that I've seen through all of the companies I've mentored is just focus on something. Don't get distracted by the shiny ball. Don't just jump from one thing to the next. Don't try and do everything at once. Don't try and run before you can walk. Figure out what the key offering is that you're going to focus on, that you're going to build, and focus on that. Don't kind of throw yourself around in 20 different directions. That's where I've tended to see the businesses that haven't succeeded. Focus is usually one of the key reasons.
I would like to go back to that point around strategy and vision, or you said vision, a clear direction. So I would say vision, mission, and I guess goals.
Yeah.
Then would you expect the people, the good people, to translate that into objective, or would you do that for them? How do you see the process of culture playing in a tech environment, in a startup? If you find the good people, do they build a culture for you, or are they expecting you to do it for them?
I think it's probably a bit of both, but more the former. I think I believe in the power of talent. You hire good people because they're good. You give them the tools that they need, you give them the support they need, and you just get out their way. That's always been my approach to, mentoring a team, to managing a team. These are bright, educated, ambitious, driven, people that you're dealing with. They don't need to be spoon-fed. You give them the freedom to go and build things how they want. That said, there needs to be a clear cultural direction set by the people at the top. And that does come from the very top. And that comes from regular reinforcement of that behavior right from the very top. So, I've been in companies where there's a very open culture, very direct. You've got an issue. If something, they require some constructive feedback or criticism, do it face to face, then and there, discuss it, agree, move on. And that is reinforced very regularly by the people right at the top. And I think set the direction, give people the right steer, but then let them be adults.
Can I ask you how you guys have been, able to adapt your face-to-face culture for it to become remote working culture?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think, to be honest, I don't think any business has quite figured that out yet, and it's quite bedded in. We are now remote first, fully remote first. People are free to work wherever they want, and subject to obviously the wider team objectives and requirements. What has tended to happen that I've seen is people coming in maybe 1 or 2 days a week. If I think about the legal team, we tend to be in the office all together 1 day a week. And that actually works really well. We spend the days, because it's not just about, obviously there is important aspects as far as collaboration and teamwork and projects are concerned, but actually it's the camaraderie and the personal side that I think is the most important thing to actually build a really strong team. you need to have that kind of trust and respect and closeness, right, from a personal point of view. My perspective anyway. So I think that we're getting there, and I think it's been really good in the sense of allowing people to manage their own lives. I think where the challenges lie is around more junior members of staff and making sure that they're properly trained. And I know that that's actually an issue within law firms as well as tech businesses.
I wonder, when is the level of maturity where, people feel comfortable to self-regulate and work from home? And I don't think it's an easy one to answer, because I've met young professionals who actually welcome, partly researcher, strategists, who welcome the quiet and the peace of working from home. But as you said, being in an office once a week. But I've also seen experts actually yearning being in that working environment where now a lot of offices are now remote working. And making the real estate saving, because actually the office, well, it may actually never be used, but as you said, once or twice a week. So finding that right balance, I think, as you said, it's very hard. It's why I'm trying to seek your views as to what worked in your environment.
I think also, Sabine, you probably need to be of a certain size before fully remote working can take effect. I think when you're in the really early stages of an idea, and you're really in the sweatshop kind of stage, you need that face-to-face time. That's when the real kind of light bulb moments occur, when you're in the same room together and you're bouncing ideas around off of each other. So you need that, I think, when you're at the really, really early stage. I was actually chatting to someone the other day who's setting up a new InsurTech business, who previously was in the London market, and he actually lets his flat, he basically allows everybody into his flat. So once a week, he just hosts everybody at his flat in London. He gets like lunch for them. They all just sit around. So there are ways of doing it without having to have an office space or, whatever else. But I think it's important at that stage, definitely, to have more face-to-face contact. I think once you start to get into Series C, Series D kind of territory, you should have the processes and structure in place to enable remote working to be an easier experience.
Yeah, I'd like as well to touch upon some of the work you've done in the past year, still linked to people, but looking at it from a data and ethics viewpoint. You've been advisor to the Charter Insurance Institute, and one of your key topics, or some of your key topics, have been data ethics, innovation, and digitization. So can you tell us how you've approached the problem, partly of data ethics, when you look at artificial intelligence and the pro and the cons of using AI today in our everyday lives?
I think one of the biggest challenges in the insurance market is around, with respect to data and the usage of data, is transparency, which of course everybody in their hearts wants to ensure for customers, and fairness, against commerciality and sensitive information. And the most obvious example of this within insurance is pricing. So insurers, where I was part of the panels at the CII where we were discussing these issues, the most common point of concern or major concern was commercially sensitive information, because you get a scenario where you're kind of compelling all insurers to share specific metrics around how they build their pricing models, how they price individual risks. That's a big kind of disclosure, right, for an insurer to make. But at the same time, they do all have very much the best intentions in terms of making sure that people are using data fairly. I think, if I think of the challenges that we've had ourselves, it's around the balance between using data to improve the products and to improve our services, and, to be honest, obviously drive greater revenue and greater growth, against how much, and I say this not from a point of view of trying to hoodwink customers, but from a point of view of how much they want to know, right? Because there's also that question as well, to my mind, around, when I think of myself as a purchaser of services or insurance services, when I provide data under a policy, I kind of almost intuitively know that they're going to use it, for example, to try and improve their pricing models or to get a better feel for their risk metrics or risk profiles, right? So, but I would guess, an educated buyer of insurance, so I kind of know that. So how much do people want to know about that stuff? You need to be careful not to overload people with these things as well. So we've had some of the most common conversations we have with our data teams are around ideas for, further pricing metrics that we could use, or further usages of that data in terms of improving the product. So that is definitely one of the biggest challenges. And I think with AI, I mean, we're getting to, it's a very difficult area in the context of regulated activities, because you need to have explainability, right? You need to be able to explain clearly why somebody's been priced in a certain way. Everybody obviously has the right to a human kind of analysis or review of a particular decision under the legislation. It's going to be very difficult, I think, to build a genuinely self-managing, machine learning, intuitive system with the necessary explainability and insight that goes with that, so that the data scientists actually really understand why certain decisions are being made. And of course, they always, ultimately, if push comes to shove, they have to explain to the ICO, or whoever it may be, how that system works. And so I guess the question is, can we keep control? Can we keep those types of systems under harness, under control, right? Or if they just run off by themselves, what could the implications be of that?
Very fair point. You mentioned the ICO, which actually now companies which are dealing with personal data, need to make sure that they are registered to the ICO. So then they are in some ways regulated or avoid to have a fine. Mm-hmm. So moving into, that data ethics, how do you see the world of sustainability then into the insurance space? Are we doing enough? Should we do more? What have you seen happening in insurance and sustainability?
I think we could do more, definitely. My business and other businesses in the InsurTech space, I know, have been actually very engaged with customers around data ethics and what that data is used for. I think traditional insurers are still a little way behind the curve. It tends to be more a question of what we can do, what we can't do, rather than why don't we ask the customer and find out what it is we can do. I think you need to have that constant dialogue. We have had conversations with couriers, with private hire drivers, with delivery drivers. What do you want? What do you want us to use your data for? Ultimately, we are providing you with a service. Do you mind if we use it to track you here, or to track this, or to track that? If it results in a fairer price, is that okay? It's engaging, not kind of treating it as being like a taboo subject. I think you want to have a really sustainable data model and data ethics, like within the business. It needs to be a two-way conversation with the customer, and I don't think that the insurance market is quite there yet, from what I've seen.
Yeah, there is often a little bit of a barrier, I would say, because the industry has been so dependent on an intermediary, and the intermediary tend to have often the relationship with the customer or the consumer. Mm-hmm. So as part of our discussion, I wanted to see how you have seen the world of corporate venturing evolve. What we are aiming to talk about on this, within the parameter of this discussion is the future of corporate venturing, what it means to scout for ventures, what it means to build ventures, and what has happened during the course of the past few years, because it's an evolving subject, right? Mm-hmm. So what have you seen, and what do you expect to see in the future?
I think definitely the trend that I'm seeing at the moment is a greater focus on existing portfolio companies and investors looking after their existing stock, right? Lots of investment, aggressive investment into already trading businesses, trading sustainable businesses. I think where people are finding it harder is in the seed space. I think seed capital has been a much bigger challenge over the last 18 months in particular, whilst everybody takes stock of this kind of new market that we're operating in. I think the other big shift that I've seen as well, and it's something that I talked about a couple of years ago, which is now very much kind of bearing fruit, is the use of investor funds for regulatory capital. So actually using investors' money to set up new insurance carriers. 2-3 years ago, I remember having a conversation with EOS Ventures about this, who of course you will know very well, and we were kind of umming and ahhing about why it is that investors don't like money being used as regulatory capital. And I remember them saying to me at the time, well, we don't like the idea of money being on a shelf, effectively, right, or being on a balance sheet, but effectively being on a shelf, not being used in the business day to day. And I think now that investors have started to look beyond that and think, well, actually the longer game here is that these guys go it the full stack carrier route themselves. And actually that's really where the money lies. Commission is obviously a small percentage of the overall premium, and they want the whole pie. So we've had investors that have backed us in terms of using funds for regulatory capital. And I know that there are other InsurTech businesses that are now going down that route. So I would expect to see, 2 or 3 more full stack carriers coming into the market over the next 12 months in 2022.
Yeah, yes, fascinating, because as you said, when we go back 5 years ago, we saw a lot of InsurTechs, I guess, wanting to be tech companies, then moving into becoming brokers often. Sorry about that. So going into becoming brokers often. And then I think it went into becoming MGA, right? MGA route became really, really the way to go. And a lot of investors who started to understand what the MGA model, managing general agency model, offered for a venture, and for them from a differentiation viewpoint, realized it's probably became a much more interesting model. Yeah. But now we can see that full stack, owning all the pie, is even more exciting.
I think also a lot of tech companies, dancing on that line, that regulated line between, well, we're software as a service, we don't want to be regulated, is a very difficult thing to do. And it becomes quite self-limiting in terms of the services and products and everything else that you can offer, right? And I think a lot of these companies, like you say, they're growing up and realizing that it's not as painful as people think it is. The FCA aren't that bad. It's a few months. It's kind of, particularly as an intermediary, you don't need an awful lot of capital to show on the balance sheet. It's relatively low capital requirements. So it's not that painful. And actually what we've also seen as well, which is interesting, are more people looking for us to appoint them as an appointed representative. So effectively loaning our regulatory status to enable them to act themselves like an intermediary. And I know that there were companies in the InsurTech space that started out as ARs and have since moved on to be fully authorized. So I think being regulated is people becoming much more open-minded about it. It used to be a bit of a dirty word, I think, when we started out, years ago. Now I think people see it as a necessity, actually.
Absolutely. And partly if we are looking to grow and differentiate, those become important routes. So what makes an innovative business model, Nick? You've seen so much.
What makes an innovative business model? Do you know what? The best ideas are the simplest. The ones where you look at them and you think, why did I not think of that? That is so obvious. I won't be unfair, because there's a friend of mine who's working on an early stage business at the moment. But the idea is just, I looked at it and I thought, we literally have these issues every day within the business that I work in. It's to do with micromobility, just to kind of give you some context. So e-scooters, e-bikes, etc. And it was just such an obvious thing in many respects. It's effectively pulling together lots of sort of individual things that are already going on in the market. I think it's finding a common factor to a problem, that multiple parties are experiencing, to just boil it down and think, what is the link here? What is the pain point that's really kind of creating the issues for these guys? And yeah, I think good people, simple product, easy to explain to investors, and a good story. That's what makes an innovative company.
Storytelling. Remember when
storytelling, yeah, exactly.
Was a bad word. Now it's all about the story and really convincing the money provider to really understand what is being offered.
Being memorable.
Absolutely, being memorable. And you're right. I'm thinking about a friend myself who is trying to revamp aspect of the marketing engagement, and he came up with a solution, combining offline and online, and social, which is fascinating to me because I'm sure that is an area which has not been investigated much. So there are so many more opportunities, things simpler, which can simple things which can be made even simpler to do in a digital world.
Yeah, I hope I stumble across one myself at some point.
So I would like to finish on with a few words from you around what you've seen and what you've learned around leadership and culture. What makes some of the tech ventures out there, ahead of the pack from the way I know we approached some of those points earlier. What are really the criteria that make amazing ventures from a leadership and culture viewpoint?
It's so funny you asked me that, because it's something I think about an awful lot around leadership. Something I think about obviously is leading a legal function, but something I think about more generally within early stage businesses, high growth businesses. I keep coming back to a book I read many years ago called Level 5 Leadership, which is basically the concept of somebody who is a level 5 leader is somebody who is super driven, really, really driven and ambitious and hardworking, but humble, 100% humility and relatable to people within the business. And that, to me, certainly if I think about people that I've held as mentors in my time and people who I would look up to and work for, is that those people who can take you with them, but in the right way, not in a forceful way, not in an arrogant way, not in a pushy way or a righteous way, just gain your kind of trust and respect just by their character. And I'll go back to the point I made earlier. Character, to me, character. It's so important. If I think about the people who've done well in InsurTech, yourself included, and all the other people that I know well in this space, they do well because they're great networkers and they're good people and they get on with people and they're easy to talk to and they help, right? They support each other, like just good people. And that is, to me, what you get a leader in place who has that vision, crystal clear vision with a simple idea, and can take people with them just simply by their aura and their presence. You've got a unicorn right there.
It's wonderful the word you are saying, because I was reflecting around what you just shared, and I would say some of the most amazing people I've met when I'm meeting every day, as you said, are very humble, they are very driven, they're also very self-confident, but they are so knowledgeable. And sometimes you have these syndromes where you may be cheating the system because you meet sometimes so knowledgeable people out there that they have this beautiful aura that you actually would like to embrace as well. Yeah. So very wise word, definitely, Nick, around what some of the amazing leaders, and I can see some pictures of even the founders we have within InsurTech, right? Who are so generous as well with their time. And that's
exactly what I was about to say. Be generous with your time, because I'm a massive believer in karma. I think you give time out, you will get the reward back, and people really underestimate, how much you can gain from a little bit of time now in terms of like the longer term picture.
Yeah. So, the word I was seeking. So they have this imposter syndrome. We sometimes have these imposter syndromes when we meet these amazing people who we feel know so much. But what I've learned during my past few years is, as you said, building that network is a requirement. And actually, you don't need to learn everything. You can learn so much from other people.
100%.
And every day, I go on those calls and I do those discussions, and I'm always learning amazing things from our network, which, while I read a lot, I learn a lot from talking to people, and also adjust, therefore, my way of seeing the world.
Yes, 100%.
So what are your last word of wisdom?
Just be genuine. Be genuine. Like, you will find that lots of people worry about how they'll be perceived, whether they're too outspoken sometimes, whether they can maybe be a bit contentious. If people know you for who you are and know that you're a good person and know that you're being true to yourself and there's no hidden agenda, you will go a long, long way. So just be yourself, be genuine, believe in yourself, without being arrogant about it, and surround yourself with people. Give your time generously.
So be yourself, respect others, have fun, I think, as well.
Have fun, yeah, definitely have fun. Definitely have fun. Don't take yourself too seriously. Don't ever take yourself too seriously.
Absolutely. But also be contrarian. And I think it's very wise what you're saying. It's, don't think you have to agree with people. People will respect you if you have a strong point of view. And actually, you accept to disagree.
100%. I agree.
So it's a pleasure to have you with me.
It's lovely. Today. Thank you for having me.
Nick. Thank you. And
thank you.
Where would people can find you, Nick?
Where people can find me, I'm on LinkedIn, so very welcome to connect with me and send me a message. I don't bite, I'm very friendly. So please feel free to connect on LinkedIn if you want to talk about anything following on from this.
Perfect, thank you, Nick. So it's Nick Pester, and you can find Nick on LinkedIn. Wishing you a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you. Sabine.
Take care, bye.
Bye.